Ordinary Zimbabweans who feel neglected and marginalised by the Zimbabwean government were eyeing the SADC summit to see if the regional body would venture into discussing reports and allegations of human rights abuses in the country. Political analyst Dr. Somadoda Fikeni joins us now via Zoom. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and it was good to talk to you. SADC, another Heads of State summit. And I guess by now, a lot of people don't often come out of these meetings expecting too much, even though much may have been said.
Well, I do think that meetings of this nature, if you read the statement that came out of this meeting, is more about exchanging pleasantries and also about succession management, which is pre-planned. And most of the statements will have been pre-planned. The only time you'll see any particular deviation from this, it's when some of the stronger regional powers in a multinational organization like SADC take a firm position. But if they fail to do so, you wouldn't expect them to mention or even talk about the human rights issues in Zimbabwe. And it was difficult for them to deal with even a smaller country such as Lesotho and resolve the issues timeously.
So why not mention Zimbabwe? The United Nations has, the African Union has, many voices have come to the fore, almost making it easy for them to put it on the table. Is it because Zimbabwe is part of SADC?
One, it's because Zimbabwe is part of SADC, and also they do have this protocol which they stretch to the limit of saying we don't want to interfere in the internal affairs or the sovereign affairs of other countries. But at the same time, also remember that most members of SADC, going back to the time of the frontline states, do have some kind of arrangement of ruling parties which have a common forum, which date back to the times of liberation struggle solidarity. That too counts. That's why the issue of quiet diplomacy has been a dominant feature rather than coming out and being vocal about some of the internal human rights abuses, which are quite obvious.
Why is there no appetite to help citizens on the ground? Because surely this is what these bodies are about. And ironically, the SADC tribunal's powers were cut soon after it made judgments on Zimbabwe, which really, I suppose, points to, look, you know, we'll talk only about the positive things, the good things, developing trade and that kind of thing. But there are citizens on the ground in countries in the SADC region that need help beyond their borders, because at times it's their governments that are putting their feet on their necks.
Certainly that ought to be done in an ideal situation, and there ought to be even peer review arrangement within SADC itself. But I do think that it has merely been symbolic and the exchange of pleasantries. Even the incoming Mozambican president is unlikely to do that because he's facing security situation in his own country and may turn to Zimbabwe, the neighboring country, and other neighboring countries to assist. So that is one of the reasons why you do have this rather tentative approach to issues which are internal, and rather reinforce cooperation, economic integration, rather than talk about the real political issues. They'll only talk about them as a way of encouragement that internal role players do play their part, or even congratulate them once the matter is resolved, as it is the case with Lesotho.
So then why is SADC then quite happy to say we are going to support Mozambique in dealing with its militants issue in the north of the country?
When they see what they see to be external threat, or they see to be an extra parliamentary grouping posing a threat, that's when they rally together to be very clear in any event, they do know that there would be no issues within Frelimo or even Mozambique when they raise such issues. But when it comes to the political issues, such as the contestation between the ruling party, the opposition, and civil society in Zimbabwe, they seem to have been weak-kneed in many instances, and sometimes failing even to criticize the clear and apparent human rights abuses in some of the instances that we've seen.
So does the body have value to ordinary citizens like you and I on the ground?
Generally, it may have value in terms of reinforcing the coordinated approach of heads of states and governments. But what the organization has failed to do is to reach out to the civil society concerns and also allow the civil society to also reach out to their counterparts in different countries. So far, this is a club of government leaders.
All right, so what happens going forward? Because if people lose faith in their institutions, what good will they be?
Well, they may have legitimacy crisis, but they may also, in the failure of having any other alternative, be utilized, be revitalized whenever you have younger, new leaders coming in who may not have too much of the history of solidarity. They may begin to raise issues, and that over time will gain traction, because that's when it will have an appeal to ordinary people on the ground.
All right, so Zimbabwe, again, not on the agenda, and I suppose what it does, it emboldens countries that might be having issues. They know that they're not going to be censured or sanctioned in any way, and they carry on doing what they do.
That is the unfortunate outcome of this, especially for the neighbors, which are the SADC region. But that in itself doesn't exempt other role players, which may be external to the region, putting emphasis and even imposing sanctions for the countries to handle their human rights issues well, especially the internal dynamics there. Some of the donor countries may even withhold their donations, and they may even censure these governments. But unfortunately, these would have been complemented by the regional organization itself, which currently is missing in action.
But how do they justify saying nothing when the African Union chairperson says something?
Well, I guess they would simply say that they are dealing with it behind the scenes as part of quiet diplomacy. And that in itself, I don't think will suffice, because this has not yielded much results. And at times, it has not even had the gentle persuasion of saying, let there be talk between the civil society and government to resolve issues.
All right. Professor Somadoda Fikeni, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program and giving us your thoughts on this challenge that this regional body has going forward, and also meeting the expectations of people on the ground. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.